everyone. Today I'll be talking about one of M's arguments in Dialogues on Ethical Vegetarianism about ethical meat production. M makes this argument in day 2 on page 25. So M's argument is that it may be possible to produce meat ethically. If it is possible, then meat eating is morally acceptable. According to this argument, if meat can be produced ethically, then animal suffering from factory farming can be avoided. So, what is the evidence for M's argument? The first is consequentialism, which comes from normative ethics. So, this theory says that the consequence of one's actions is the defining feature of the rightness or wrongness of one's actions. So, when we relate this to M's argument, if the negative consequence of animal suffering is minimized or removed from meat eating, then meat eating can be morally acceptable. There is also new scientific research that shows that ethical meat production is being worked on. So, in the book, free range meat or humane certified meat is discussed, which we will expand upon. And upon further research, as of 2023, there is also evidence that lab-grown meat can reduce animal suffering while making meat consumption morally acceptable. So these are two different types of meat production, which I will go into more detail. All right, so let's talk about first lab-grown meat, also known as cultured meat. So this involves removing only a few muscle cells from a living animal, and the animal's pain is typically reduced through anesthesia. So as you can see, the graphic on the right kind of provides a guide for how the process works. So once the cells are harvested, they are placed in bioreactors before adding them to nutrients. The cells grow and multiply, and they produce muscle tissue that are shaped by scientists into scaffoldings. So what scientists do is they kind of take a plant, for example, or another model to help the animal cells grow, almost artificially. And then this can then be used to produce meat products such as steaks, chicken nuggets, and burgers without the animal suffering from factory farms. So scientists at the National University of Singapore are currently producing pork with red sorghum grain, which, again, they're using that plant, we have a picture here, as a scaffold or model to attach these pig cells to. And in the US, lab-grown meat has been approved for sale by the US Department of Agriculture in 2023, and that's according to these companies, Good Meat and Upside Foods. And the citation is from Nation for Change, an environmental nonprofit that is exploring these forms of meat production. So why is this in support of M's argument? How does this example support M's argument? So first, less animals killed, right? So if we only need a few cells from an animal to produce a larger amount of meat, less animals have to suffer. So according to this source, the Nation for Change, a single cell from a cow could produce 175 million quarter-pound burgers. 74 billion animals will not have to die every year, as was pointed out in Dialogues for Ethical Vegetarianism. And also, this argument about ethical meat production is one of M's stronger arguments. So here, right, M acknowledges that animals experience pain without attempting to assign a level of pain to compare with human pain. So in this argument, M is not saying that animals are necessarily less conscious or that they suffer less, but M is acknowledging that pain and is talking about an alternative solution that may allow people to keep eating meat while producing it ethically. And this agrees with utilitarianism. So because ethical meat production minimizes animal suffering, this successfully addresses V's argument that inflicting needless suffering for minor benefit is what makes meat eating morally unacceptable. Now, V's objection was that M is talking about a hypothetical world in which meat eating might be acceptable. In the current conditions that humans find themselves in, meat is unacceptable. However, this is an insufficient objection. First of all, the new research shows that M's argument is not hypothetical. It's backed by scientific research. So it rejects the speciesism that V brings up. Ethical meat production research and implementation show that scientists and consumers care about animal suffering. And the normal conditions that V says humans actually find themselves in can be changed. And there are a couple of ethical theories that can support this. So number one, we already discussed consequentialism, and there are two others. One is social constructivism, as it is applied to meat ethics. So Peter L. Berger and Thomas Luckman are sociologists who wrote The Social Construction of Reality in 1966, and they argue that humans control social reality. So when we apply this to the ethics of eating meat, humans can choose more ethical forms of meat production than factory farming. Also, when we look at the existentialism, Sartre is a philosopher who argued that humans are free and responsible for creating meaning and values. So norms and rules, like the eating lifestyle, are not predetermined. So when we apply this to meat ethics, humans can choose to reject cruel meat production practices and adopt ethical ones. And V acknowledges that humans have free will and can regulate their moral behavior according to principles in day 2. So the same applies to meat production. If we can regulate our moral principles elsewise, we can also choose how to produce meat so that people can still eat it and it can still be morally acceptable. So the conclusion is that ethical meat production is a strong argument for the morality of meat consumption since animal suffering can be minimized. This argument acknowledges that it's difficult for people to change their dietary preferences, but it tries to reduce animal cruelty while allowing people to eat what they want. And again, here are the works cited for all the examples, including the scientific research. Thank you.